Multiversus is a failure. About a month ago now, Warner Bros. Revealed that Multiversus was a large factor in a $100 million loss for the company's gaming efforts. And looking at the past couple years, this wasn't very surprising to find out. Despite the game's open beta launch going viral, hitting a peak of over 150,000 players, which is insane by platform fighter standards, developer Player First Games has been unable to keep up that hype, taking the game offline about a year later and then relaunching in May of 2024. And throughout the relaunch's first 3 seasons, there were several questionable decisions made that drastically changed the Multiversus environment. A complete rework of the gameplay from beta, with even more reworks to come, a much more strict live service grind, and a general anti-consumer sentiment that even the game's very frequent content updates have a hard time covering up. And unfortunately, Multiversus' 4th season, titled Midnight Misfits, has no interest in fixing any of these problems, delivering yet another commendable chunk of new content starring 2 fan-favorite additions, while also making what was already kind of a broken, messy grind into even more of a broken, messy grind. Let's talk about Multiversus Season 4. As usual for Multiversus, the new characters are the highlight of the season. We have Teen Titans Raven and Marceline the Vampire Queen from Adventure Time. And I gotta say, I loved playing as both of them. Raven is a zoner with a lot of slow-moving projectiles, but her main gimmick is her Raven. She can send out this bird and use special moves wherever it ends up, allowing the player to do a lot of fun juggles with their enemies. And she gets a rage boost when she takes enough damage. In a lot of ways, she feels like a combination of several characters I already like. The projectile game of Black Adam, the split character gimmick of Steven Universe, and the ability to survive longer at higher percentages makes my reckless playstyle a little more forgiving to work around, especially since they removed the Last Stand perk in Season 3. Meanwhile, Marceline's whole thing is getting small, quick amounts of chip damage in before using her slow-moving bat specials to finish off enemies, and she has a whole load of tools at her disposal. I think Marceline might be the character with the most individual attacks she can do, and it makes her feel so versatile in motion. These guys are both great. People who have been keeping up with this series will know that I've struggled to find characters I've really enjoyed playing, but I'm happy to report back and say that these 2 instantly clicked for me. They're animated well, their movesets fit in nicely with the source material, and as a bonus, both of them were highly requested characters, some of the most popular from their individual series, and even more importantly, they were characters I actually cared about before this game, so I am so unbelievably happy to welcome them to the roster. I just wish more people got to play as them. Unlike the first 3 seasons, the headlining character is no longer included in the Battle Pass. Instead, much like Nubia and Beetlejuice before her, Raven was dropped for the premium currency Gleamium day and date of the new season and available through the Fighter Road 3 days later. More on that to come. I like how they're no longer locking characters behind the Battle Pass. In the past, if you didn't buy it, you had to wait till the end of the season, which is around 60 days, to unlock characters like Jason or the Powerpuff Girls, and that is really egregious, but I don't think they thought this through properly either. Tier 1 of the Battle Pass was a skin for Raven, so hypothetically, if you were someone who had just enough Gleamium left over from the last season to purchase the new Battle Pass, the first thing you would get is for a character you don't have, and if you want that character, you either have to spend money or wait 3 days. This feels like yet another way to try and get you to put down money, like you're gonna have this crazy cosmetic burning a hole in your pocket for 3 days before you can even start the grind for them, a cosmetic that will give you double XP later in the season, so you might as well purchase their starter bundle. And if you're like me and have leftover character tickets from the beta, they make you go into a different place now to unlock them. In Season 3 you could just do it in the character select screen, but now you have to do it in the fighter shop, buried towards the bottom of the store tab. And it's like, why did you add more steps to this? Is the amount of people who will choose to buy it with real money right that second at the slightest inconvenience that much higher to justify hiding the option from people who gave you money already? Because in order to get the character tickets in the first place, you have to have purchased one of the Founders Packs, which I did. For $100. I feel like I say this every season, but the pushy monetization that Multiversus has on offer is so gross. I get it, it's a free-to-play game. You need money for more content, server upkeep, what have you. But I hate constantly being reminded of that fact. A good game incentivizes spending by being a good game first. A desperate game does whatever this is. I've never seen a game so forward and heavy-handed with its monetization. They put up all these guardrails and hoops to jump through, and I have to ask, are you making enough money from this to justify how much it hurts the experience for your dedicated player base? Is the short-term cash worth the inevitable death by paper cuts that every Multiversus player is destined to experience? And outside aside of this headache with the new characters, it's hard to ignore that the Battle Pass offerings are also just far worse this go around. They attempted to reuse cosmetics from the past, there are even more filler items like Gem XP and Toast, and barring a couple exceptions, most of these outfits overlap with the event skins. It feels like they already had the lower effort event skins done, but then had to scramble to fill out the Battle Pass, so they just threw a couple of those in, and even the better looking ones are victim to an incredibly obvious lower bar of quality. And that's even harder to ignore because there are now 2 of them. That's right, for some reason they decided to give this season 2 smaller battle passes that each last around half the season instead of one big one. And I say big one, but it's really like a normal one, or in Multiversus' case, a smaller than average one. When people first saw this, they perhaps optimistically thought that it was a way for them to give us more cosmetics, but I did the math, and not so. Season 1 offered 9 skins, 9 ring out animations, 3,300 fighter currency, and a whole new character for 950 gleamium. Season 4 offers 9 skins, 8 ring out animations, no fighter currency, and no character for 1,600 gleamium. Less rewards for almost double the price. To be completely fair, they did lower the prices of the individual battle passes to 800 gleamium each, which is cheaper than it used to be, and you can still earn back all the currency through the pass, but for around half of the rewards per pass, I would expect more than a 16% discount. And you may have noticed that I said Season 4 offered no fighter currency, and that's because Season 4 actually did a major revamp to how you unlock new characters. And would you believe that everything we've been talking about so far is just the tip of the iceberg? The biggest problem Multiversus has had since relaunch is how difficult it is for a new player to get into the game. So when they announced that they were completely reworking the method for unlocking new characters from a grind for currency into something called the Fighter Road, an experience-based system that would allow for more natural progression, I was hopeful. I thought that they were listening to us. I've said since the beginning of this whole debacle that the best thing Multiversus could do to maintain a player base is make it easier for people to unlock the characters that they want to play. Especially with online favorites like Marceline now being here, removing the barriers to access these characters would be the best thing for drawing new faces to the game. Makes sense, right? So would someone please tell me why the Fighter Road only adds more roadblocks to unlocking characters while not undoing any of the actual grind that people were complaining about? Instead of grinding for fighter currency, you are now grinding for fighter XP. A normal PvP match rewards 100 XP, 50 more if you win, and almost all of the fighters require 15,000 of the stuff to unlock them, so that equals out to at least 100 games per character. And honestly, this isn't the worst. But then you add in the fact that you can't choose which characters you want to unlock. The Fighter Road is a tiered progression system, with every tier giving you a choice between 3 characters. You start with Wonder Woman, Jake or Bugs Bunny, then Batman, Tom and Jerry, and Garnet, then whoever you didn't choose out of the first 3, then whoever you didn't choose from the next 3, and you continue in this obtuse pattern for 30 tiers. You can't just select anyone from the roster. No matter what, you'll have to play at least 2,900 games to start the grind for Raven. This is bad. If an average match of Multiversus takes around 5 minutes, that's 241 hours of in-game time. Over 10 days! They try to make it better by giving bonus XP through trying new modes, leveling up characters, putting fighter XP in the battle pass, and giving you a bonus if you're wearing certain skins, but stuff like that requires you to already be invested in the game. If someone new was to hop into this before they had access to any of that, there would be a grind so hilariously bad in front of them that I wouldn't blame them if they just uninstalled right there on the spot. And on top of how insanely slow this is, you can't bank progress with this system. Fighter currency may have been slow, but at least you're always passively earning some. I've never used fighter currency once, but I've somehow accumulated 42,000 of the stuff just through playing the game. But if you have all the fighters unlocked already, fighter XP just gets converted to battle pass XP, meaning that if you have quests or what have you that reward fighter XP, it's literally in your best interest to avoid playing the game until there's new characters, because otherwise you'll just be wasting your time. Fighter Road doesn't meaningfully change anything, it only makes things even worse for free-to-play players and rewards the whales. Only people already deep in Multiversus hell like me will benefit from faster battle pass completion. And people who spend money on the new characters will unlock more characters faster because for some reason Marceline and Raven give you missions to obtain extra fighter XP, something that will be completely useless useless if you unlock them as the fighter road intends you to do. We might be too far gone at this point, but I genuinely think the best thing the game could do right now is abandon the idea of paying for characters completely. New characters are the biggest form of advertising this game has. Raven and her fantastic Multiversus redesign is the most I've seen people talk about this game since relaunch. If we want more players, they need to be able to get their hands on them. Especially since the multiverse gimmick is targeting people from across fandoms. There are probably Raven stans who don't care about multiverses or fighting games at all, but would be willing to pop in for a quick game or two if they could play as her. And maybe based off of those 2 games, we have a new fan on our hands. I initially picked up this game because I saw Steven Universe in the trailer. If they had made it so I had to grind 1,000 matches to unlock him, I would have never bothered. This system is crazy bad. And keep in mind, most hardcore players likely unlocked most of the roster back when it was easier in the beta or slightly easier in seasons 1 through 3. This serves exclusively to punish new players. Dedicated players are more likely to spend money on a game anyways. I think it would be smarter in the long haul to try and attract more players, a fraction of whom will go above and beyond, rather than expecting everyone who is already going above and beyond to go in even harder. So much of this game's seasonal content revolves around this huge roster. You have to do battle pass quests with different characters, rewards for events are character-specific cosmetics, and the rifts require you to work around all these different character tags, but you can hardly engage with these systems at all unless you have like 2/3 of the roster unlocked. And worse over, in terms of cosmetics, it's a guessing game as to who will get what. Velma and Black Adam have gotten multiple Battle Pass skins in a row, most of the post-relaunch cast only has 1 or 2 non-recolor skins, and a good chunk of the roster has some kind of model issue or broken texture that would disincentivize people from buying cosmetics for them. Like the Steven Universe characters have never looked right in this game. And having to unlock them all separately and make all these different value judgments about who will be the most worthwhile for whatever reason is an exercise I can't imagine the average player wants to go through. Sometimes you just want to play your guy. They recently added a character bundle to the shop to try and mitigate this issue, $50 worth of Gleamium to unlock the entire roster pre-Raven, with the price going down if you already own some. But again, we need more players, and I can't imagine anyone on the fence about Multiversus is going to put down the price of a used copy of Smash Ultimate for a game that was just reported to be a major cause in a $100 million loss for Warner Bros. But that's just my 2 cents. And it's like, I want this game to succeed, but I don't want them to do it like this. I've started to see a lot of people in the community pop up and say things like, oh, you better be spending money on Multiversus or you're part of the problem. You gotta put your money where your mouth is. And like, if that's what it's come to, I want this game to fail. When this game does shutter its doors, any and all failings will be entirely on the staff who makes choices like putting all these roadblocks in place for new players, announcing the hitboxes and netcode are fixed for every update despite those being a consistent issue, and fundamentally changing the core gameplay from beta to relaunch. It won't be the fault of little Jimmy the Multiversus fan who didn't buy enough skins. I get supporting what you like, but at a certain point, the game has to earn it. Multiversus earned $100 out of me in the beta, and it feels crazy and stupid to say that now, but evaluating how much mileage I've gotten out of the game, I feel safe saying that. But the game has not once enticed me to drop a cent on it since then. I haven't felt this burned by a game that I once loved since my very messy and public breakup with Overwatch. And hell, even Overwatch eventually learned that you can't do the whole characters in the battle pass thing. They gave up on trying to sell characters separately earlier this year, and its competitor, Marvel Rivals, marketed itself on the promise that all characters would be available to all players for free. I think we should be taking some notes here. And changes like this don't only hurt the game in the long term, they hurt the game's perception. The fact that Multiversus has reinvented how to unlock characters 3 different times in 2 years and every time it got worse is horrible. It paints a really bad picture when major game mechanics can just come and go like this. And on that, let's talk about shields. Last season, Multiversus introduced shields as an experimental possible new game mechanic, and I thought that it wasn't a good idea because the game has barely figured out how to make the mechanics it's had for years work, and I thought reinventing the core gameplay 6 months in wasn't going to be a very feasible solution to the balance issues the game was facing. Lo and behold, a month later, shields were added to the game permanently, as if to spite me specifically. One of my pet peeves in games like this is when they implement a mechanic that you know was only added because they couldn't figure out how to balance around something else. People keep spamming moves. Instead of figuring out how to make those moves less powerful, let's just throw in shields so now you can block the spamming. I can't help but roll my eyes whenever I see a big, sweeping, potentially very divisive change to a game's core like this, especially for a game like Multiversus where they're struggling to maintain players as it is. It's clear that there's no vision for high-level Multiversus gameplay, and they're just letting the dominoes fall where they will, listening to the players who champion the idea of shields because they want this game to play like every other platform fighter, and I just think that's a cowardly way to handle game balance. And outside of my personal thoughts on how we got here, in execution, it just doesn't feel right. Super Smash Bros.' shields work in a sort of rock, paper, scissors triangle. If someone's attacking, you shield. If someone's shielding, you grab. And if someone's trying to grab, you attack. But Multiversus doesn't have grabs, at least not universally, so instead you get a shield break attack, which is just an enhanced version of a move your character already has, so it doesn't choreograph super well. Also, the characters who do have grabs can use those against shields, so this universal mechanic and what works against it is all weirdly character specific, making balancing even harder. The animation for shielding looks odd, and unlike Smash Bros, the shield doesn't shrink, so you have to monitor a tiny shield health bar beneath the battle. And I may be a little biased because I didn't like the idea of shields in the first place, but I think it just serves to make this game a little more convoluted to anyone new coming in. Plus, adding shields doesn't really undo the strength of spamming dodges, at least not at my admittedly low ranked level, so you hop into games and you barely see people using shields in the first place, and you begin to wonder why they even bothered. If they were going to add shields, I think they should have cooked a little longer. The conspiracy that I've been seeing is that shields were rushed out the door so that they could be used at the Platfight Gaming Championships, an event for, as you could probably guess, platform fighters. It's clear that the devs were really hoping this would be a big event for the game. They were running a Multiversus tournament, they set up a demo build of Marceline at their booth, and they even had in-game cosmetics celebrating the event. And in an ironic twist, this attempt to capture more platform fighter fans by making Multiversus closer to the other ones didn't even get a chance to work because one of the only major competitive tournaments that this game has ever been featured in immediately voted to not use shields because people had been practicing without them. What should have been a major symbiotic slam dunk for the game ended up as yet another controversy because they decided to radically change the core gameplay for no reason. They couldn't even push it back to the Marceline update. They had to make it go live right before the event. To bring up the Overwatch comparison again, I feel very similarly to shields that I do 5v5. Which is to say, I get why they did it, and it very well might be better for the long-term health of the game, we'll just have to wait and see. But right now, in this moment, I feel like it only serves to alienate people who liked the game as it was, chasing an audience that has already long abandoned us. People accuse me of being a Multiversus hater, and I get it, I talk a lot of smack, but I do want this game to succeed. It just feels disingenuous to only talk about the good stuff when the game is fundamentally ripping itself apart at the seams. Like, yeah, the new stages are cool, but the season also just broke so much. Like when Raven came out, my game kept crashing, and then I found out it was only when I was using Raven's down special, but only sometimes, and then I found out that the perk I was using was the reason I kept disconnecting, and while they had removed it from being equipped, they didn't remove it from my account, so they just gave me a button to crash the game, but only sometimes. Eventually this was fixed, but the devs were radio silent about if/when this perk would return, or what even prompted its removal on any of the game's socials, despite the fact that this specific perk was a topic of note during the official stream hyping up the new season. You'd just watch the stream and it wouldn't be in the game. Arena mode is cute, taking 8 teams and throwing them into a series of random PvP matches with the option to buy upgrades between rounds, a roguelike twist on Multiversus that I actually had quite a good time with, but it rewards prestige currency, so the devs have taken this as an excuse to inflate prestige prices because now you can grind for it. Everything comes with an asterisk nowadays, and despite how much I love the core gameplay, I can't ignore that, and it's gotten to the point where I now expect the worst from this game. Like, I could talk about how my game glitched and made me spend Gleamium on Gem XP and WB support refusing to refund me that cost, or the fact that they broke the game-ending victory screen for like half the season. There was no animation anymore, it just appeared. But things like that don't surprise me anymore. So many things are getting worse with no actual fixes on the horizon. Silence from developers is now just the norm, and I'm watching more and more people in the fanbase get either blackpilled about the game's future, giving up entirely, or putting up walls and becoming defensive shills, and it's really sad to watch these once prominent figureheads lose their love for the game like this. If it wasn't incredibly clear by my tone throughout this video, I think the writing is on the wall for Multiversus. I think this deep into the game's lifespan, expecting anything to change in a meaningful way is coping. And while I'm happy to go down with the ship, it's been frustrating to watch this game squander its potential so heavily. As this comment from the last video so elegantly put it, if this was any other game, the community would just leave it to rot. Multiversus was, and to an extent still is, special. People love this game, and while I think the community can be a little misguided in how they show that love, the passion is there. I want this game to succeed, but it's not going to succeed like this. There needs to be some major course correction. Course correction that I thought would take place in Season 4, and we might be out of time to put things back together. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was recently canceled, a game that a couple weeks ago was in a very similar position to Multiversus. This isn't me baiting, this isn't a hate video, this is a plea. I'm on my knees here. If the game makes it to Season 5, we can't be doing things like adding rifts with loot boxes or re-implementing the live system that everyone dragged you for. I would be shocked if this didn't blow up in your face somehow. And I feel like the devs know this. They probably won't say it out loud for fairly obvious reasons, but I watch those Into the Verse streams. I'm an empath. I can tell the energy behind closed doors is dire, and I don't want to direct any unnecessary negativity to them. God knows they probably hate this shit as much as we do, but something needs to change, and I'm not sure if it can. Season 5 just got delayed to February. Last time there was a delay for a new Multiversus season, the game was taken offline. I think taking this as a sign of the game's end times is a little hyperbolic, but it's definitely not a good sign either, and in combination with Season 4's messy handling, I can see why people think this game isn't going to be around much longer. Where do I land on this issue? Girl, I don't know. I want to believe there's still hope, but based on certain character teasers, we have a pretty solid idea of who our next fighters might be, and barring maybe one, none of them have the star power that Raven and Marceline held. I like Daffy Duck, but he isn't gonna turn heads like they did. I think we might have missed our chance. But for as long as they keep making updates, I'll keep being here to talk about them. If nothing else, you can count on that much, because unlike Warner Bros, I know how to keep my promises. Next video is Best Games 2024. See ya!